So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome today's speaker to our group. He sparks breakthroughs for leaders in peer groups and individual coaching. He's got a certificate as a heart math trainer and a whole brain thinking practitioner. And apart from being very busy, he's part of the aquatic master swim team and lives with his wife for 35 years in San Rafael. 3 kids and 2 grandkids. Oh my God.
Yes.
We are reaching that part of life. So Mike, welcome. Help me welcome Mike, Dr. Mike Pelfini. Thank you. Good to see you here, Mike.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be seen and to be here today, and also to see so many familiar people again after a little bit.
And Mike and I, as we were preparing for today's session, decided that we'll try something a little different. And instead of hopping right into a presentation, we'll just build on some of those lovely chats we've had and start out with a little bit of a conversation first before you lead us through some exercises.
Perfect.
I mean, wow, we are what, 20 months into this pandemic. It's been hard on everybody. How do you think about that, or what do you pay attention to as we're sort of wrestling with all these changes?
Yeah. Well, personally, I've paid attention to, you know, the different kind of seem to be phases of this pandemic. This sense of, oh my God, this is not going away. This is serious. You know, and then really leaning into my introverted self and saying, this isn't so bad. And then you know, and then going to, wow, this is, the longer it went on and the more I spoke with people, the impact of just the uncertainty and then the attendant kind of more negative types of emotions that people have experienced, anxiety, stress, you know, that most human beings experience when they face change. And so
yeah, and not just change, but I think there's some recognition about how important it is for us to be around other people as a way of really sort of managing our nervous system and our sense of well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember our conversation when I learned, I hadn't been aware that how much of a sailor you are, and the way that you described what happens for you when you are on a boat, sailboat with other people, and how, you know, that's your, you called it your happy place. but I would imagine that a big part of that is the fact that you're not out there by yourself. Although that can be nice, but you are actually working in coordination with a lot of people, and a
lot of it nonverbal.
Yeah. Energetic.
Just responding to each other and being in sync with each other.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, we are sort of in that collective soup that we all are participating in, and it's been harder under all these stressful situations.
Yeah.
To maintain our sense of well-being.
Yeah. The good news is that it's raised more on the radar, the collective consciousness, the importance of the mental side of the health spectrum, and less, you know, the stigma around mental health is even eroding even further, which is a good thing.
And I've, in my own practice, noticed, like, you know, I can remember the time when we shifted from emphasizing time management to energy management as a way of really thinking differently about how we're structuring our days.
Yeah.
And now there's sort of an additional shift happening in terms of not just energy, but paying attention to our nervous system.
Yeah, like how can you manage something that is a human construct, you know, time? You can't manage time.
Fair enough.
You sure can manage yourself, though, right?
That's where I had to face that.
Yeah.
And particularly sort of living by myself,
Yeah.
there's some limits to what I can do in self-regulation.
Mm. Mm.
And being in relationship is so part and parcel of what it means to be human.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, welcome to the tribe.
A human after all. Who knew?
Yeah.
So, you know,
There may have been
sort of
doubts out there among some. I don't know.
how have, like, what has helped you with your ability to self-regulate, yeah, and become, you know, deal with the loss of connection that is so,
Yeah.
that we're all kind of facing?
Well, it's introspection. And you know, it is literally some of what I've learned in through the Institute of Heart Math about what happens, the impact of the heart on the rest of me, and not just that, on the rest of the world. And so diving into learning more about that, and pursuing and getting the certifications I've gotten as a coach and mentor, and then as a trainer, and just using the framework myself, not just in my work with others, but for myself.
Mark just mentioned in our grading connections, reading about it doesn't help. You actually need to practice and do it.
Yeah, way to go, Mark. That's right.
So tell us a little more about the Heart Math Institute.
Yeah, well, it's been around for over 30 years. Started down in that magical place, Boulder Creek, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and it's they've studied the heart and the physiology of the heart and its impact on decision making, on regulating emotions, on reducing stress and building resilience. And it's a framework now, and they've conducted a tremendous amount of research. There are over 400 published and peer-reviewed studies in American Journal of Cardiology, Harvard Business Review. I mean, it's a very well studied and researched research topic, and they continue to do experiments and research, and work with all sorts of organizations and people. It's embraced in hospitals and healthcare professionals to reduce the costs of healthcare, in businesses to build team effectiveness, police, fire, first responders use it to reduce the negative impacts of prolonged stress, and in the military and special forces, it's used to reduce the harmful effects of PTSD. Professional athletes, Olympic teams use it to enhance peak performance, and build resilience. Schools use it to enhance learning. So it's a well dispersed framework and supported by science.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I love that there are people on the call today who are familiar with it, and who have actually gone through the certifications. That's a good thing.
It'll keep you honest.
That too.
So, with that, I can't wait for you to show us some of the exercises that we'll be able to use, right after this meeting, to start help us, be in touch with our heart and our nervous system, and deal with however this situation keeps unfolding and whatever challenges it'll present in the future.
Perfect. I'm so excited to be able to share. What I'm going to provide for everybody is a couple of experiences with a couple of techniques. I will provide in the chat a link to a PDF that has all of this. So, you can write furiously, or you can lean into just experiencing this. Whatever's comfortable for you. And really, I want to talk about a couple of aspects of the techniques. One having to do with kind of relational energetics, and the other having to do with kind of practical intuition. Lot of studies about both of those. So most of us had the experience of being in the presence of someone, or when we walk in a room with other people, where we sense it's kind of just a feeling that something's off without saying a word, right? You feel something's off. Well, there's some science behind this experience, or behind the experience that most of us have had of that explains why it feels good to be around some people. You know, you just like hanging out. For example, here's some of the science that was conducted around this. When you go to a doctor's office for an EKG, I've not had one of those, but I know about them, and they stick electrodes across your chest, an electrocardiogram. That EKG is measuring the flow of electricity that's produced by the heart. Okay, so we also know from basic physics that whenever there's a flow of electricity or a flow of current, there's also a magnetic field that gets produced. It's like literally like the magnets that you have on your refrigerator. And magnetic fields can go through things, as you know, like walls. For example, your cell phone works inside of a room. Cell phones communicate with cell towers that are outside. It's a perfect analogy for this because we use the magnetic field between the cell phone and the tower to communicate information, the conversation you're having. There's no cell phone that looks like that, by the way. That's just like so old, but maybe they used to, the flip ones. Anyway, yeah, the photos, the texts, so that magnetic field is sending that information to a cell tower. And we work the same way. The magnetic field that's produced by our heart is a carrier of information, especially our emotional state. And we can decode that information, that emotional information, such as anger, anxiety, love, compassion, because each emotion has an energetic signal or signature or profile, like a thumbprint. And our nervous systems also act like antennas, like the cell phone tower, and we can detect information in other people's magnetic field. And not only do we detect it, it has measurable effects on us. That's why we can walk into a room where people are kind of upset and arguing and kind of cynical, and it can drain our energy, putting us into a more incoherent state. And, you know, unless you're really in tune with being able to regulate your emotional state, you know, it can throw you off. So one set of experiments showed that when we are in a more coherent state, more coherent, more heart-centered, and I loved, Ulrika, when you introduced the mission of BACN as heart-centered. That was my experience with, and didn't realize it at the time. My first meeting I came in, this is, oh, I felt it in my heart. Well, this experience, this state of being in a coherent, heart-centered state, which is the natural state that we're in when we're experiencing emotions like love, kindness, compassion, joy, we can have a measurable impact on other people, helping them shift into a more coherent state. This summer, quick story. This summer, I was putting together 3 of those patio heaters, you know, and I was on the 3rd one, and you know, experienced everything that you experience when you put something like that together. You know, the hassle of finding the instructions in English, you know, the instructions not necessarily perfectly matching with what the tools that I had, the things I had, you know, the threads not fitting perfectly. Anyway, I was building it out. Now I'm on the 3rd heater. I got cuts on my hands, you know, but I'm getting it. I'm going to get this done. And in walk into our patio, my 2 grandkids, and they're going to jump in the pool. And so Rico, our grandson, 4 years old at the time, sees me with materials, sees the tools, lights up, runs over to me. Hey, can I help, Nono Mike? And inside I think, oh boy, now I gotta incorporate a labor force into this project that I just want to have be done. And so I said, of course, Rico, like a good grandfather. And I handed him a bunch of bolts. Later found out he probably could have built the thing himself and I could have walked away. But anyway, I handed him some bolts to hold, and he very patiently stood there holding the bolts. And I was working on one bolt, screwing it in, having a hard time. I had a ratchet in the other hand, and I realized, oh man, I got to use two hands. So I set the ratchet down on the metal tray, and I resumed screwing in the bolt. And I look over, and there's Rico, and he's just doing this. I said, what, buddy? He says, sometimes I feel like that. I said, oh, really? And what is that feeling? He said, and he stopped and he thought, and he said, crummy. So, I mean, that shifted me into a feeling of joy for just, I mean, I thought about what was happening there too, but the experience in my heart was joy. And so I share that only because it's a wonderful example that we can impact each other, that we pick up and we send. So here's a technique I want to walk us through and invite you to follow with me. And I'll share a little science behind it too. Additional science. This is called the heart lock-in technique. It brings us into a heart-centered state of coherence. And when we practice it regularly, very important. When we practice it regularly and for increasing lengths of time, we're only going to do it for, a minute or two. It allows us to build our baseline so that we can sustain our coherence and recapture it more quickly when, not if, but when we lose it from moment to moment. It's a powerful tool that creates beneficial and sustained changes in our bodies physiologically. It changes our physiology and in our nervous system. And it also provides a means of impacting the coherence of others. So I invite you now to close your eyes. You can do it with your eyes open. It's probably easier with your eyes closed. And focus your attention in the area of the heart. Imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Just a nice, comfortable rhythm. And now activate and sustain a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation, care, or compassion. And really try to experience the feeling itself. And now radiate that renewing feeling to yourself and to others. Someone particular that you have in mind, or people. We'll do this for another moment or so, and I'll let you know when we're done. Okay, when you're ready, come on back to the room. And we ask for one volunteer. Just unmute yourself if you want to share what your experience was there. Anybody want to share? Deborah.
What I felt, Mike, was connection, calm, ease. I think a good descriptive word as well is readiness.
Very
and
nice.
availability.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's just another way to be inside self and be able to project that sense of centeredness.
And connection that you felt with anyone in particular?
Yeah, clients, family members. It's like what's beautiful, it's collective.
Yeah.
What's beautiful, Mike, is that yes, you can have one person in mind and all of a sudden that one person becomes others.
Yeah.
Because energy moves like that, right?
It certainly does. It certainly does. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm hoping that what you will see is what I want you to see. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Share. Share. Now, are you seeing a slide deck here?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So, wonderful. Now what happened? Oh, thank you. So what we're talking about is relational energetics is the term. And as I was describing earlier, our thoughts and emotions affect this magnetic field that gets created and is measurable. And we heard clearly, not just among human beings. Beautiful picture, Janet, that you shared of the horse connecting, the horse's heart connecting to the human's heart. It's been my experience in the times that I've been out at the ranch in Tamales Bay. So here's an experiment that was conducted. Josh and Mabel. Josh is the son of the head of research, Dr. Roland McCratty at the Institute of Heart Math. And in this experiment, so both wore heart rate variability, HRV. It's what gets measured as it's a measurement of the beats between heartbeats, of the time space between heartbeats. That is a measure of coherence. Okay, so they both wore sensors, both Mabel and Josh, that were synced with each other. And then Mabel was let into the room, into this lab room to explore. New environment for her. Normally she wasn't allowed in there. And then Josh entered later and was instructed not to interact with Mabel, just to sit down and shift into a coherent state, sending love and care to Mabel. And I'll show you in a moment. As soon as Josh shifted into a coherent state, Mabel's heart rhythms became more coherent too. And when Josh left the room, both his and Mabel's heart rhythms became more irregular. And there you see the graphs. You see up on top where Josh and Mabel were. Point is, you see when Josh enters the room, what happens, the heart rhythms, the heart rate variability becomes much more regular. And that's the impact that Josh was having on Mabel. And then when he left the room, you saw what happened to both of them. Okay, the graph down below just shows you Josh's, and Mabel's is on top. All right. There's one more experiment. This experiment put groups of 4 people seated around a table. All of them wore the same heart rate variability monitors, recording devices. 3 of the 4 people were instructed to shift in and out of coherence at random intervals. They had a signal that was not visible to the 4th person. The 4th person didn't know what the others were doing. And the results showed that when the 3 shifted into a coherent state, you see the blue person down below, that person also became more coherent. So this is just a couple of examples there of, stop sharing. Just a couple of examples of the kind of experiments that are conducted that illustrate this relational energetics. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, how did they actually in these experiments shift to a more coherent state? What was the process of that?
Thank you. Remember when we did the heart lock-in technique,
Right.
I invited you to experience care, compassion for someone or something. The shift, you enter into a more coherent state when you are experiencing some of those, what we would say are more positive emotions.
So they were given a similar instruction.
Yes, exactly. And the key is you can't just picture it or remember a time when. It's the actual experience that your physiology is having of the emotional state. Okay. And, you know, going back to what Volker and I were chatting about, it's like that's one of the things that I've has been a big learning for me, is that I get to decide what my emotional state is. I might enter a room and pick up, you know, or be in conversation with someone and pick up negativity and then start feeling that myself. But once I'm aware of that, I can shift, and everyone can. And guess what? It takes practice, like anything else. Okay.
Mike, I'm wondering if one person can affect everyone else in a room.
Yes. I mean, the answer is yes. There's a lot of other factors, you know, what other people are experiencing at that time, you know, how deeply they're experiencing it, you know, whether or not literally you've had caffeine, because a lot of times that doesn't show up. It affects the heart rate. Like during that 5-minute break, I sat down and I put my sensor on, and I didn't get as high a score in coherence as I typically get, because caffeine affects that. So another reason to monitor your intake of caffeine. But yes, one person can affect many others. And there's also an initiative that the Institute of Heart Math is involved with many other organizations on global coherence, and really feeding the quantum field with this kind of energy, magnetic field, that can impact people around the world, not just in a room.
Mike,
And yes.
I don't know if you're monitoring chat, but Joey was wondering, you know, what might get in the way of people finding that coherent state?
Oh yeah, that's great. Great question. You know, it's the depth of the emotion that you're experiencing. I was working with one client who, with the simple form, the quick coherence technique, which is very similar to what we just did with the heart lock-in. And she was just having the hardest time getting into a coherent state. She just couldn't experience, you know, a regenerative feeling. And so we talked a little bit, and there's times I can't either. It's just the way it is. And different things can impact that. And in talking with my client, it turns out her mother, she was moving her mother from one facility who was experiencing deepening dementia, moving her out of her home into a assisted living facility. Her father had just passed away. She was in the midst of separating and eventually divorce her husband. So her system wasn't coursing with a lot of positivity. So it was, you know, and that's when I said, you know what, just doing the heart focused breathing, putting your attention on your heart and imagine and slowing down your breathing, tells your amygdala, that's responsible for constantly scanning the environment, as you know, for danger. It tells your amygdala, oh, everything seems to be okay. Systems are okay. He's breathing slowly and deeply. We must not have to run anywhere. And that can be beneficial too. And so it's hopefully that answers your question. Take one more.
Mike, I have a a question? This is
Yes, Sheila. Yes.
Actually, I have two questions if I can sneak them in. There was a graph you showed, I think Mabel and Josh, where after they parted,
Yes.
it changed. And I was kind of dismayed at that because I like to think that if we're synchronized and our heart rhythms are calmer, that lasts for a while. So that's one question, is how long it lasts. And the other question is, I'm sure HeartMath has done research on this. What are the effects of doing it in a group virtually as opposed to in person?
Doing it in a group virtually as opposed to in person. Okay.
Virtually, yeah.
Yeah. So the first question, no need to be dismayed. What went down was the heart rate variability, but there's in my experience, there's a lingering state of coherence that you still have access to. And it's, if you were to want to delve into this more, I know there's a few people on the call who use these, this is the sensor. This connects to your earlobe, and then it connects Bluetooth to an app on my phone. They make another one that just connects to your earlobe and then to your computer, and it measures the heart rate variability. You see a lot of graphs, and I mean, there's times when it doesn't take much to have the coherence graph change, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are experiencing anything negative, if that makes sense. Now, can this be experienced virtually? I'm hoping so. I'm hoping some of you are experiencing that. Deborah did. I conducted my HeartMath trainer certification on the first weekend of shelter in place. I don't know if those of you who were here remember, I think I may have been the last live presenter when I talked about whole brain thinking back in February of 2020 over at where we usually meet. And I teased about this training HeartMath that was going to be a trainer certification I was going to be engaged in Scottsdale. Well, that didn't happen in Scottsdale, but they shifted it to this version, this format. So I sat Thursday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., going through the material. And we did, I don't know how many techniques throughout each day. And it really has an impact. It really does have an impact. And in the breakout rooms, impacting each other as well. And that's because of the quantum field.
And that's, have they actually studied that in terms of impacting each other? For sure, we can each be doing it individually, but is there actually an effect on each other?
I don't know that. I won't guess.
I mean, I've experienced it. I believe it, but I'm just curious if they actually show.
I imagine so. But I don't know of a study that comes to mind right now. I invite everyone to go to the Institute of HeartMath, heartmath.org and heartmath.com. Heartmath.org is the where you get certified, I believe, and heartmath.com is where you can purchase some of the technology, or it might be the other way around. You'll figure it out. Moving on. How am I doing on time?
Yeah, we want to. We have another 10, 15.
Okay. I didn't hear that, Volker. Sorry.
You have another 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Let me move on then, and I'll put also my my email address, phone number, so if there are additional questions that we can't get to, you can contact me. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced. Now I want to talk about HeartMath and practical intuition. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced a flash of insight while not paying particular attention, like while you're taking a walk or in the shower or working in the yard, right? Yeah, it's a very common human experience. HeartMath Institute and others have studied this phenomenon, and it's often referred to as the intuition of the heart. I'd like to share a brief video clip that will illustrate one aspect of the science of this now. Are you seeing beyond words?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Could you widen screen?
We did an experiment here at HeartMath to study how the information flows between the heart and the brain. And we actually discovered something quite remarkable, something that surprised us. The participants in the study were connected to various sensors to measure their brain waves, their heartbeats, and so on. And then they were exposed to various images. Some were high arousal, like a car crash or a snake striking, while others were low arousal images, like bunny rabbits in nature scenes. The participants were asked to push a button. They then saw a blank computer screen for 6 seconds. The computer then randomly selected one of these photographs that it displayed for 3 seconds. After that, the screen went blank for 10 seconds. They were prompted to push the button again, and they repeated this protocol about 30 times. When we analyzed all the data, the results were astounding. The heart seemed to know the images before the participants ever saw the images with their eyes. If the future picture was going to be one of the emotionally arousing ones, the heart rate started to drop about 5 seconds before the image was randomly selected to be shown on the screen. So nobody could know what this future picture was going to be. The heart had a much greater deacceleration than if it was going to be a calm picture. These results have since been replicated in many different independent labs around the world, actually. Well, a lot of people say that I don't feel it in my heart, I feel it in my gut. But here's what's really happening. The information comes to the heart first. The heart then sends a different signal to the brain, which we can measure. Then you have a brain response, and then a body response. And with the body response, like the feeling in the gut or the hair on the back of the neck, is where it becomes conscious. But the real flow of information is heart, brain, body. And this is all happening many seconds before the actual event occurs. So what this body of research is telling us is that the heart seems to be connected to a type of intuition that is not bound by the limits of time and space. But what is that source of intuition? What is the heart connected to? And how can we learn to tap into more of that?
Okay. Exit. Stage right. So I want to teach a technique called the freeze frame technique. It's a technique, it's a multi-purpose technique for stopping energy drain. And for our purposes here, for enhancing clarity and discernment. So you can get that signal from your heart about something that you need to know. It helps you access higher mental functions, which are typically compromised during stress and reactive states. And so, yeah, I'd like you to do this now. Get a piece of paper and please write down, take a moment to write down a problem, decision, or issue that you're facing. And it don't take a long time with this. It doesn't have to be like, do I change my career? Or, you know, it's just something that you need some clarity about. And write that down and jot down a couple of attitudes or feelings that you have about it. Like it might be a frustrating.
Can you repeat that again, Mike, please?
Certainly. Write down a problem, decision, or issue for which you want some clarity or a solution. And any attitudes or feelings that you have about it right now that you've been experiencing. Give you about 30 more seconds here. Okay. And now same kind of stance, probably easier to do with your eyes closed. Acknowledge this problem, decision, or issue, and any attitudes or feelings that you have about it. Okay. Now focus your attention in the area of the heart. And imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. Now make a sincere attempt to re-experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. Now, from this more objective place, ask yourself, what would be an efficient, effective attitude, action, or solution? And quietly observe any subtle changes in perceptions, attitudes, or feelings. And commit to sustaining those beneficial attitude shifts and acting on new insights. Okay, I invite you to come back to the room here. I completely rushed you through that. You might want to take a little bit more time when you use that. But right now, take a moment to jot a note or two about your experience. And literally one person, I'd love to hear from one person. If you'd care to share about it. Very briefly.
I noticed when I had the feelings, making it more heart-centered. I noticed that my muscles softened and my head went back, almost as if like I was looking up toward the sun, like waiting for the warmth on my face. And then I thought, no, did I do that intentionally? And then I kind of went back to that place again, and the same thing happened. My muscles relaxed, my head went back, and I kind of felt like I was looking up again, like kind of toward taking the sunlight in on my face.
Nice.
Very interesting experience.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's your body associating into a state that's familiar, that's positive, clearly. And my guess is the sun has something to do with it for you. I'm hopeful that some experienced a shift or an idea. I know from my experience, this is like a go-to tool for me, and is one that has to be practiced, like any others. I mean, having a heart-focused practice using these techniques is what helps generate their power. But I will sit down and say, oh yeah, I can do a freeze frame on that. And I'll just sit down and I'll go through those steps. And it's not sometimes, it's not even usually, it's always, I get some sort of and it's a subtle, it can be sometimes very subtle, just a shift in seeing the problem differently, or an actual like, oh no, do this, take this action. I had an experience of it yesterday with my Vistage peer group meeting on my way to the meeting. And I got myself into a state while driving. You can do this while driving. It's designed to be on the go, all these techniques on the go. And I ended up taking action. I won't go take time here, but it was a wonderful experience. And it was like, again, It was very positive. So I'm going to share a little bit here again on this science here. Do you see the person with the electrodes on her head?
We don't see the presenter mode. We see your edit mode again.
Okay, swap displays. Now do you see the slide?
I'm waiting.
We still see the presenter mode and we see benefits of a coherent field environment, the last slide that you showed us.
Wow.
And we can see the other one below it on the left. And
Okay. 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 Now I got to go back here. And share screen. What are you seeing?
The slide for the past video. Like,
Got it.
The electrophysiology of non-local intuition?
Correct.
Hi, awesome. So there are 3 types of intuition. I'm not going to go into all of them that Heart Math Institute talks about. Implicit knowledge. So that's like memory, conscious or unconscious, of something that we've learned. So that's the kind of intuition where a mechanic pops your hood, listens to the engine and says, oh yeah, you need a new alternator. What? How do you know that? Energetic sensitivity, which we talked about, sensing through the magnetic fields when someone is staring at us, maybe. And then this is the kind I'm talking about here, non-local intuition. It's neither of the other two. It's the kind of thing like when a mom senses that her child on the other side of the world is having a problem. Studies consistently show that changes in heart activity are the best physiological indicator of a future event. They can pre-alert us. So if a future event has emotional relevance for us, that's what triggers this phenomenon that we just saw in the video. And it happens faster, obviously, you saw, faster than we can think it. It bypasses the normal thought process. So these insights, thinking of someone and they call. I remember in one of my workouts when I first learned about this, I was swimming in the pool. I was coming up to the wall, and I had the thought, geez, I haven't seen Casey for months. I just realized the thought just came to me, and by the time I got to the wall, she walked in. What? That's what this is. A police officer sensing danger when there's no apparent or obvious indicators. An athlete who makes fast, intuitive moves. That's non-local intuition. So what would be some benefits of accessing that part of what we all have? I'll just share some that Heart Math has identified here. Being able to access that deeper wisdom and intelligence that resides in your heart. Some were talking about staying aligned. Janet, you referenced that. Aligning your core values and sense of purpose with your behaviors. Knowing what to say in awkward situations for those of us who sometimes struggle with that. It takes a trust, it takes practice. In the old style radio, analog radio, where you could like be between stations, when you dial in and you can practice in dialing into your heart's intuition, that signal becomes very clear. And accessing creativity and making more intelligent decisions. I could say more, but I'd like to hear from others to take a moment here in our remaining couple of minutes to jot down some key learnings that you've had and maybe some way that how you're going to apply something that you've learned here. So take a moment to jot down a couple of things, and I'm going to put into the chat. Let's stop share now for a second. A PDF that I have here.
All right. So
yeah, who's got something they'd like to share that they're going to do? Mark, I saw you pop something into the chat.
Well, I got a meeting with a client at 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna be practicing this at about 10:20.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know I'm a student as well this, and it's crazy how good this is. So thanks for this today, Mike. You know, and to hear it's like going to church on Sunday. I feel saved again. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome.
And share. So when you had us do that exercise about, working with a problem, the problem I was working on was this sort of compulsion I have to play online solitaire. It's not actually something that I enjoy, but it comes up as a kind of avoidant for the feeling of sort of ennui, kind of boredom. And it's like a defense to to just like the grind of how life has become a little bit. Anyway, so I was doing it on that, and what I really realized, like, I started to have a lot of compassion for myself in that. And so it wasn't like a fighting against that thing. And it was, what I really realized is that when it comes up, there's a moment where I have choice. And so my solution really is to start exploring these methodologies at that moment I have choice. And if I choose to go, play some game, doing it out of choice feels really different than doing it and like finding myself in it for way too long.
That's great, share. Thank you, Janet. That's a great use of I mean, it's so practical, and tuning into yourself and your needs. Absolutely. I can't figure out how to put this PDF into chat, and I don't want to take any more time, so I'm giving my phone number and email address. So any other shares?
I would like to, I'm on a board of directors and we're about to hire a new executive director. And we appointed a committee, they're very competent, and we're going through a search firm, and, all kinds of things are working in our favor. And I'm starting to get worried about it. And I wrote down concerned and expectant and, who's this person going to be? And then also a little bit hopeful and trying to be open. But by the end of the exercise, I felt much more trust. Meaning that I think that they're going to select the right person, although we have arranged for the rest of us who are now bystanders to have some input. But up until then, I was feeling somewhat distrustful, which was
That's a great, thank you for sharing that, Alice. I mean, that sense of trust comes about, as I would describe it, as an experience of what do I really have control over and what don't I have control over, in part. And I mean, I'm interpreting your experience, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's when we are in a more coherent state, we are more aligned with what the way I'll say it, what is true and authentic.
I just was thinking back, I had no words for it then, but when I was doing workshops, if I came into the workshop in my head, here's what I'm going to do and what they're going to learn, it didn't turn out as well as if I came in and really felt like a string was from my heart to their heart. collectively.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
that I got into my body more than my head, and then they seemed to do the same, which I had no idea what was going on, but it seemed to work out more, more than it didn't, when I didn't come in the other frame of mind.
Yeah. Anyone who has a teenager who, if you're driving in a car and they don't want to hear anything you had to say, they might be upset. Guess what you get to do? You can get yourself into a coherent state, and they will pick that up, and that will help them. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the kind of thing with your eyes open you can do in a social gathering, and get yourself in a coherent state. You'll know what to say, what to do, who to talk with.
Awesome. Great. I am watching time.
Yes.
And let's all thank Mike for these very practical and easy to do exercises to help us deal with whatever is in store for us here over the winter and family holidays. Thank you very much, Mike, for walking us through these exercises, and